Hello, and thank you for tuning into this week's episode of Bite-Sized Cybercrime, the podcast where we discuss cybercrimes and cybersecurity news. This week, we will be talking about the return of one of the oldest Iranian threat actors, Prince of Persia, also known as Infi, or Infi, but I'm going to call them Prince of Persia because that's cooler and also a video game. Not only was it the oldest group out of Iran, but in general, one of the oldest state-backed advanced persistent threat groups. For context, they were active as far back as 2004. That's before YouTube was a thing. That's also before a lot of countries started using nation-state threat actors at all, and when cybersecurity was either non-existent or in its infancy, for anyone outside of the military, at least. Prince of Persia was thought to be long gone, with Dark Reading describing the group as out of circulation in 2018, and researchers not seeing any kind of activity from them at all since 2022, which now is almost 4 years ago, if you wanted to know that, with the last major reporting on the group happening in 2021, the year prior. Even in the 2010s, the group was weirdly quiet while other threat actors began to start taking media spotlight for their attacks. The story of Prince of Persia is so unique, in part because it is incredibly unusual to have one fully operational cyber threat group and all their infrastructure still up and running for nearly 2 decades. A lot of groups I report on have lasted for less time than my podcast has been running. We've seen groups come and go since I started the show in 2022 up until now in December of 2025. But to see a group that has been around for almost my entire life is pretty crazy. Threat actor groups tend to be short-lived for various reasons, but mostly due to international efforts to take them down, even just changing priorities, needing to rebrand and get rid of everything as not to be caught by authorities. This is something that is incredibly difficult to do for a very long time without getting caught in some form or having to switch gears at all. Though we thought Prince of Persia was another such threat actor group quietly disbanding or shutting down for some other reason, it turns out they never actually left at all. SafeBreach recently reported that not only are they still around with their same infrastructure, but this entire time they've been actively spying on Iranian citizens as well as some individuals across Iraq, Turkey, India, Europe, and even Canada. Part of the reason they stayed hidden so well is due to their incredibly advanced operational security techniques, and the way they secure and communicate with a C2 server that makes it nearly impossible to trace. C2 stands for Command and Control, because there's 2 Cs. And it's basically the infrastructure that hackers use to communicate with their victims' machines, either by sending malware, having that malware report back, spying on them. It's the server that receives and sends the communications to the victims. It also turns out that Prince of Persia has been using and upgrading the same tools for years, Foudre and Tonnerre, which are French for lightning and thunder. Foudre is a pretty basic lightweight tool that sends system information to Prince of Persia's C2 infrastructure. The purpose of this tool is to investigate whether someone is worth pursuing further. If you're boring, they may decide you're not worth it. I'm sorry to hear that. You're worth it to me. It sends back basic data to the group to analyze and decide if it's worth going deeper. And then, if they do decide it is, that's where Tonnerre comes in. Tonnerre is a much deeper spyware. It actually uses Telegram's API to send commands and retrieve data from victims within a private Telegram group. This in itself isn't really all that unusual, but what is interesting is that they don't embed the API key within the code for Tonnerre itself. If you are a web developer, this sounds completely normal and reasonable, but threat actors often just don't do this. But it's done for the same reason that a web developer would think, yeah, duh, of course, why would you embed the API key directly into the code? Which is to protect their channel. The key is only retrieved when it's absolutely necessary to exfiltrate data or send commands, making it really difficult to see any information at all related to that Telegram group. This is why we hadn't really seen any activity from them. It was just really, really difficult to see much of anything. Foudre similarly protects the C2 infrastructure. The malware code includes a public key which generates 100 domain names of different servers each week using an algorithm that's made for generating domain names. The malware will connect to the first one and download an encrypted signature file to verify that the server is indeed legit. If the signature does not match what the malware trusts, it doesn't trust that server and it moves down the list to the next server and repeats the process until it finds one that it does trust, and then it can connect to it. This is to prevent the traffic from being intercepted or, more importantly, researchers making a fake server, seeing the pattern, and trying to redirect the traffic to them to investigate what the group is doing. This is something that many researchers claim to have never seen malicious domains do, though this method for verifying the domain is pretty common amongst legitimate websites, again, to make sure they're being protected. This case leaves us with a lot of uncomfortable questions, the biggest one being, how many other threat actors do we think have been long disbanded but are actually still out there, spying, biding their time? I'll leave you on that lovely note. Thank you to SafeBreach for breaking the news, and another thanks to Dark Reading, SC-World, and CSO Online for reporting on this case as well. And of course, thank you for tuning into this week's episode of Bite Size Cybercrime, and until next time, stay secure.